Wow. Bryan Kohberger is the most unlucky person on the planet. Hello, this is Grant Hughes of Grant Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. But oh my God, you got to admit, since a lot of people believe out there that Bryan Kohberger is innocent, he must be the most unlucky person on the planet. For example, just think about the original sin. When he moved from Pennsylvania to Washington, much like Ted Bundy did, but I digress. Think how unlucky it is that he moved all the way from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, where he was set up. Man, that is unlucky. If he had just stayed in Pennsylvania, maybe pursued a doctoral degree over there, I'm not sure DeSales University has that, but perhaps he could have done that over there. Man, that is extremely, extremely unlucky. It's also extremely unfortunate that almost a dozen times his phone pinged late at night near the residence where Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xander Kernodle were all killed in the early morning hours of November 22nd, 2022. It's also incredibly unlucky for Kohberger that he tells people that he drives around late at night and in the early morning hours all the time. He just gets an urge and gets in his car and drives around way late at night and in the early morning hours. It's also incredibly unfortunate that when he did this very same thing, driving around late at night in the early morning hours on November 13th, 2022, he turned his phone off at 2:54. Because a lot of people do that at 2:54 in the morning, not wanting to get interrupted on your cruise to look at beautiful things. You don't want to be interrupted at 2:54 in the morning because a lot of people call you at 2:54 in the morning. So he turned his phone off. And then amazingly, the phone doesn't turn on again until 4:48. And guess what happened in between that time frame? A white Elantra was driving around from 3:26 until 4:20 in the area of the residence where all four victims were killed. And then the phone turns back on at 4:48 south of Moscow, Idaho, heading away from Moscow, Idaho at 4:48. Man, that is unlucky. Just think about that. What are the odds that he just happened to turn his phone off during the time of the murders and then he turns it back on after? It's just unbelievable. Really, really, really bad luck on his part. And another thing that's absolutely incredibly unlucky for Bryan Kohberger is that a white Elantra that matches his. It's amazing that another unlucky moment is that two officers in the, directly after the homicides had discovered a white Elantra in Pullman, Washington that matched Bryan Kohberger's. And they put it down, they wrote it down that they found the white Elantra. And it's just incredibly unlucky that they would have done that. And then at 3:26 on the morning of November 13th, 2022, a white Elantra matching his vehicle is seen on Indian Hills Drive, right over here. So it's a vehicle that looks like his, but it's not his, right? He's just incredibly unlucky. And then 2 minutes later, that same vehicle, the white Elantra, drives by this A&W here. And guess what? It was missing its front license plate. It turns out that in the state of Pennsylvania, they just happen to not require front license plates and only need back license plates. Don't you think that's absolutely just the most unlucky thing you've ever heard? Is that he didn't have front license plates on his white Elantra, and then there was another white Elantra driving around at 3:28 in the morning, also missing its front license plate. It's incredible. And it was driving by right here at 3:28. And then at 3:29, according to Ann Taylor herself, there's a verified sighting of her client, aka Bryan Kohberger, driving by right here without its front license plate. Man, that is so unlucky that when he drove by here a minute after here, it was a different vehicle. Like this vehicle, the white Elantra here, must have turned off on a side road, and then Kohberger's vehicle just magically appeared right there, and then it drove this direction, and then this road right here on Linda Lane, it's really bad luck again that it films a white sedan driving this direction at 2:49 and 49 seconds. Just really, really bad luck. And then the camera at 1112 King Road also picks up a white Elantra coming back here when it does multiple loops back here. I mean, just think how bad of luck that is. That Kohberger's vehicle was spotted just right over here, and it was going in this direction, and it's not his vehicle that is driving around back here. It's incredible. So this vehicle, a white Elantra driving back here, drove by here at 3:31, the first pass. It came around. Then it sat back here for a couple of minutes, then left. And then it came back around at 3:39 again, driving back around like this. And then it stopped here for a couple of minutes. And then it left for a little bit longer, came back at 3:57, drove around like that. And then it came back around at 4:05, and it came back here, and it's just so crazy that when this car turned around and drove back this way and did a 3-point turn, think how unlucky it is that it turns out they're able to determine it's an Elantra that's doing a 3-point turn right here. And remember, Bryan Kohberger drives one missing a front license plate. Man, you have to admit he's the most unlucky person on the planet. And then on the final pass of the vehicle driving back here, it must have stopped at 4:08. And we know that because at 4:20, it's leaving at a high rate of speed. So just think how unlucky it was that inside of that 12 minutes, 4 individuals were killed inside the residence, while a white Elantra, missing its front license plate, is parked for 12 minutes outside the residence. Man, that's unlucky. So think how unlucky it was that inside the house between 4:08 and 4:20, a knife sheath was left on the bed that had DNA on it. It was on the bed of Madison Mogan next to her right side, and it had DNA on it. And then also between 4:08 and 4:20, Dylan Mortensen sees an individual in there that has bushy eyebrows. That just, with incredibly bad luck, matches Bryan Kohberger's eyebrows. And then even more bad luck for Bryan Kohberger is that after investigators swabbed the knife sheath in there, they found DNA on it. And then a lead developed by the FBI doing genetic genealogy, IGG, investigative genetic genealogy, determined that the DNA belonged to a person named Bryan Kohberger. Now that was just a tip that they gave law enforcement. But man, think how unfortunate that was that his DNA was on that knife sheath. It's absolutely incredible. And then there was a trip home that he made after the homicides. He had already, amazingly, I mean, just incredible coincidence, bad luck again, he had to replace his license plate, and he did this within a couple weeks after the homicide. He changed his license plate to the Washington state plates, where he had front and back license plate and a completely different number. I mean, I'm sure it's just a complete coincidence and just another unlucky, bad luck situation. And then just think how unlucky it was that when the trash was collected at the Kohberger residence as part of the investigation by investigators to determine if the lead that was given to them by the FBI was in fact Bryan Kohberger, think how unlucky it was when it was determined that the DNA found in the trash statistically turned out to be either a sibling or the biological father of the killer. I mean, that's absolutely incredible, isn't it? And then, really, I mean, almost the ultimate bad luck was after they swabbed Bryan Kohberger's mouth, they compared his DNA directly to the DNA on the knife sheath, I believe using CODIS. They determined it was a 1-to-1 match. And man, that's unlucky. Some other person must have placed the DNA on that knife sheath. Poor Bryan Kohberger. And as you all remember, Bryan Kohberger headed home after the homicides. Of course, he had replaced his license plates at this point because Washington requires front and back license plate, and he needed to register his vehicle in the state of Washington. I'm sure the timing was bad luck as well. So as we know, he and his father were driving back from Pullman, Washington to Pennsylvania. His father had flown there to drive back with Bryan Kohberger. So because he was pulled over twice on the drive home, he must have been absolutely paranoid. And I mean, it's incredibly unlucky that law enforcement made him paranoid, because that's what led to him sitting in the kitchen wearing gloves and separating the trash and placing his own trash into the neighbor's garbage can. Man, that is so unlucky. Because think, if he wasn't pulled over twice, he wouldn't have been paranoid and therefore wouldn't have been separating the trash and wouldn't look so bad. Man, he is unlucky. Also, think about how unlucky it is that when he finally decided to turn his phone back on after the homicides at 4:48, he was right down here, south of Moscow, Idaho. And then think how unfortunate it is again for him that these cell towers actually kept following him as he came around like this. And then, amazingly, with the exact precise amount of time, it's incredible that these cameras over here picked up another one of these phantom white Elantras driving around, driving north right here on Bishop Drive. And then, miraculously, his phone pings again in Pullman, Washington at 5:30. Man, that's incredible. What? Have you ever seen somebody with worse luck than him? I think he should go play the lottery tomorrow. Although he can't, he is in jail currently. And also think about how unlucky it was the next day when the same suspect vehicle, which is a white Elantra missing a front license plate, drove all the way down here to Lewiston and Clarkston, Washington. And then the phone that was turned on at 4:48 near Blaine and the phone that was turned off at 2:54, isn't it amazing that that phone pinged right here at Kate's Cup of Joe? So obviously the phone must be with somebody else, because Bryan Kohberger is the most unlucky person in the world. Somebody else must have control of that phone. So his phone actually utilized the same resources as Kate's Cup of Joe right here. And then more bad luck. Right over here, a camera at this, I think it's called the Food Chef store, filmed the white Elantra. So now you have the phone and the white Elantra at the same moment in time being associated with each other. And then to make matters even worse and to continue the run of bad luck, there was a guy that got out of a vehicle right here that looked exactly like Bryan Kohberger. It was amazing. And then when he went into the store and he bought some things, his name was Bryan Kohberger also. It's incredible the bad luck associated with Bryan Kohberger. What are the odds that somebody driving a white Elantra, missing a front license plate, that somebody using his phone looks exactly like Bryan Kohberger when he went into this Albertsons here? My God, that's incredible. I mean, they should do a movie about this. I mean, you have to admit, Bryan Kohberger is one of the most unlucky people on the planet. That this guy came all the way from Pennsylvania to Washington in a white Elantra, missing a front license plate. And on the very night of the murders, there was somebody else driving around a white Elantra, missing a front license plate, at the same time that he was driving around in Moscow, Idaho, without a front license plate. So there were two white Elantras driving around within 2 minutes of each other, right in this area, one here and one there, and these other white Elantras were not Bryan Kohberger. Wow, that's incredible. And then the white Elantras that were not Bryan Kohberger's kept driving around in circles over here, when one of them finally stopped right here for 12 minutes. And then inside of that 12-minute time frame, Dylan Mortensen noticed somebody with bushy eyebrows. Man, again, just so unlucky. And then on the bed in Madison Mogen's room, a knife sheath was left. And just, wouldn't you know, horrendous luck for Kohberger. His DNA was found on that knife sheath and eventually led to a direct comparison from him to the knife sheath, and it was a match. God, you guys, I don't know about you, but I don't want to ever gamble again, because think of the possibilities of bad luck. Kohberger exhibited all of them. All right, everybody, thank you all very much for watching. Maybe you can let me know in the comments some of the other bad luck moments of Bryan Kohberger. I think there's plenty. Thanks for watching, and as I always say, until next time, be safe out there.